אשר קדישנו במצוותיו, וציוונו לעסוק בדברי תורה, לעסוק בדברי תורה, לעסוק בדברי תורה, לעסוק בדברי תורה, לעסוק בדברי תורה. Okay, so first of all, if you haven't bought tickets for the Amatosh and Hurl, do and buy more, because we're not going to make it. We need it to get through the year. Let's get through next month. And let's talk about where we are right now in Talmud. So we finished the Bible, right? And it ends, and the first temple has been destroyed, and there's prophecies in the prophets of the rebuilding of the second temple. And Ezra and Nehemiah, as we discussed last week, are rebuilding the temple. Okay, then what happens? You got the second temple now. Okay, that we built. So in the 586, 587, before the Common Era, the first temple is destroyed. The second temple gets built, and then you have the second temple that will be destroyed in 70 of the Common Era. Okay, we don't say AD. That means Anno Domini.
How soon was the temple built? The second
roughly 50 to 70 years. It's built from the time.
Close.
Yeah. So
that was destroyed by the Romans.
No, the first one is destroyed by the Babylonians.
No, the second temple.
Second temple is destroyed by the Romans. Okay. In between, what happens is you get the codification of what becomes known as the Talmud. You have these men that are in the assembly called the Sanhedrin, and these don't apologize. You missed a great story that I'll fill you in on later, though. I was blessed to be at a very serious, hardcore Saturday night. It was fabulous. Hardcore Azusa type church.
Oh.
Speaking in tongues, laying of hands experience that they invited me to come and to speak at. It was fabulous. It was fabulous. So the temple's destroyed. The first temple's destroyed. The second temple's destroyed in 70 the Common Era. What happens in between is we have this idea of the men of the Great Assembly, the Sanhedrin, and they have dialogues. They're a court. They're a court of 71 sages. Okay, and people come to them with questions, with legal questions. Okay, now we have something called Torah from Mount Sinai. That's the written Torah. And then Torah Sheba'al Peh, the oral Torah. Okay? The oral Torah it says, as an example, God says to Moses, protect the Sabbath. Right? But what does that mean? Well, what happens is Moses says, hey, God, what's that mean? And God says, do this, don't do that, do this, don't do that. And then Moses passes it to Joshua, and Joshua passes it to the elders, who pass it to the prophets, who pass it to the men of the Great Assembly. And it gets finally written down by a man named Judah Hanasi, these dialogues. Okay? It's oral tradition. So here's what happens. Orlando comes in and he says, am I allowed on the Sabbath to move a bottle of water that's more than half full, more than 2 feet? Let's just say that's his question. Okay? Rabbi Ed says, I was taught by my grandfather, who was taught by his grandfather, was taught by his grandfather, was taught by Joshua, was taught by Moses. No, you cannot. Rabbi Fiona says, I was taught by my grandfather, was taught by his grandfather, was taught by his grandfather, was taught by Joshua, was taught by Moses, that you can. Okay? And they start to have this argument, this dialogue, what's called a machlochet, a debate. Okay? And they start to debate. We start to debate. And as an assembly of 71 elders, so the way you become one of these guys is one of these men of the assembly is that you've been an apprentice to one before you. So they're really wise because they're supported by the community. They don't have to worry about their mortgage, their car payments, or anything else. And they're supported by the community. So they're dealing with these problems generation after generation. It's like clerking for the Supreme Court. You have a couple of clerks, and then one of them ultimately will make it to be on the assembly. You got 71 of them. The law is, by the way, that we are ultimately going to decide with Rabbi Fiona or Rabbi Ed, or the men of the Great Assembly are going to say, you know what, we can't figure it out. The Messiah will come tell us when he shows up, Teku, which means we have no idea the Messiah will tell us, which is really frustrating to hear. Okay. But there are all these arguments. So as this argument goes on, right, we're arguing about the water, right, whether a bottle of water. And Suddenly Rabbi Michael says, well, but you know what? Water is not just water. This is really not a consideration only of water, because it says over here in this piece of the Torah that water, that Mayim Chayim, the water of life, is like the Torah. And so what we're really talking about is, can we move Torah teachings? And then someone else says, well, but can we change Torah teachings? And you have this dialogue. And it's very organic. It's not A to B to C to D. It's the way our minds work and our conversations work, which is we can start talking about one thing in a normal conversation and it will go all over. And eventually it gets back to the answer, but it goes all over the place in the meantime. And so it teaches logic as well. It teaches how to think. So what happens in this is it's all about how do we live the laws in the Bible. Go ahead.
Are these
Sanhedrin.
Sages, are they rabbis? Actually?
Yes, because rabbi just means my teacher.
Right.
Okay, so they are lawyers, rabbis, judges. Rabbis, lawyers, judges, priests. Not priests, lawyers, judges, teachers, spiritualists, and some of them are also Kohanim, are also priests. And so these dialogues go on, and eventually they're codified. Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi codifies them in what's called the Mishnah, or the second piece. It's oral Torah. Okay, and then you have the Gemara, which is even additional writings of all these things. This happens by the 2nd century in the Common Era. So structurally, when we say Talmud, the word Talmud means you will study or you will teach. You will learn or you will teach. It comes from Lilmod, to study. Talmud, you will study, you will teach. And ultimately what we get is, structurally in the Talmud, we get Mishnah and Gemara. And they're split into what are called tractates, okay, which are called a Masechta. So all of these round books right here are different tractates, or different chapters, different tractates. Okay? It's the soft-cover version that was donated by Dr. Michael Savage. So, and Janet Wonder, his wife. So these dialogues are written about, and then the Gemara starts where the dialogue is about in the Mishnah, and then goes even further all over the map to come back. Right? Throughout the Talmud, you will find pairings of rabbis arguing, Hillel versus Shammai. You'll find, Reish Lakish versus Yochanan. They're fighting with each other. They're very passionate about it. And it's about law, and it's about how to practice. Now, thematically, there are two aspects of the Talmud. One is called halacha. Halacha literally is generally translated as law. What it really means is a way of going. It comes from the root lalechet, means a way of going. It's not law like we think of law in our culture. This is the way you should go. Agadah, which means storytelling. I make this disclaimer up front. The vast majority of people you would ever study Talmud with will tell you the halacha is important and the Agadah is unimportant. The law is important, the rest is narshkeit. Okay. I side on the other side, which is that the Agadah is important and the law comes out of the stories, not the other way around. Now, I'm in definite minority, but I'm in good company with people like Abraham Joshua Heschel, so I'm okay with it. Right? So I'm okay. So structurally, you have Mishnah and Gemara, and they make the Talmud. And thematically, you have halacha and agadah, and they go in between. So I make a comment about the water being the spirit, and that reminds so-and-so who starts talking about, a story about the spirit of hovering over the waters. And that reminds somebody else about some other story. They start talking about somebody speaking in tongues at a church meeting they went to, right? And it goes all over the map, right? The stories lead to the law as well. Everyone, makes sense to everyone so far? So when you hear someone say, the Talmud says, that's what they're saying.
Well, and you said that the
Halacha, law.
halacha doesn't really translate to law. It means the way of going.
Correct.
And therefore, I can see how a story would be very important into showing a way to go.
I believe so, but again, most will just say, what's important is you can do this, don't do this. Okay? Every tractate, every Masechta in the Talmud has a Mishnah and a Gemara, with the exception of one, which is called Pirkei Avot. Where's a copy of Pirkei Avot? I'm sure we have one. Pirkei Avot, which means ethics of our fathers, only has a Mishnah. It has no Gemara, has no secondary on it. There are a lot of commentaries on Pirkei Avot or Pirkei Avos. The traditional reading that you read when you mourn someone, it's also the traditional reading between Passover and Shavuot. So this is a translation. This includes a translation. This is one of, I think there's 3 volumes that make up this tractate in this translation of Talmud. So this is a page of Talmud. I'm going to pass this around. This here is actually the Talmud. Here are more modern commentators, like from the 5th and 8th and 12th and 18th centuries. Actually, it doesn't go that far, but I think it goes only to 11th because there's Rashi and up here too. So you have Rambam and Rashi and these different commentators here. Tosafot. This is actually the middle part is the Gemara and the Mishnah. Okay, and it takes. This is just a translation to give an idea. This translation of this one page, which is page 4a, in English, it's 1, 2, 3, 4 pages of English. Just this part here. It's written in a shorthand. I'll pass this around. It's written in a shorthand. So rather than, it's not complete sentences. So when you see a translation, what you will often see is the dark words will be what it literally says. And the light words are from the editor of that particular volume who's making it into sentences in English that work. Okay?
So this is the translation of this.
No,
page,
of just this middle part.
of the middle part.
Correct.
And this is only one page.
It'll tell you what page that, what does that say? Well, let's really say over here. What does that say?
3B2.
Okay, so that's the second page of 3B. Yeah.
What was it in shorthand? Why did they do it?
It's scribing. It's like a scribe. It's like taking stenography notes of the dialogues. Okay.
Oh, and they have the Gimel as 3. So,
Right.
Yeah.
So it goes around. So it's really it's you can't understand Judaism without understanding Talmud, because it's how you do everything. It's also, look, as a young man, I thought Talmud was for old men who had too much time on their hands. I now believe it holds the secrets of the universe, which means either it holds the secrets of the universe or I've become an old man with too much time on my hands. I realize both are possibilities. Okay. So this is kind of what, when someone says the Talmud says, this is what they're referring to. Okay. And again, this is a soft cover version, but that's the ultimate. When you have one that's that size, when you have a set that's that size, it basically would take up the entire wall. The whole. I mean, you can see this is, you can see how small this is. It's paperback, right? And it takes up all of these shelves.
And each book represents.
So each Masechta has a different theme. That Masechta is Kedushin, which means it deals with marriage, as opposed to a tractate that's called Rosh Hashanah, which deals with. See, you guys already got it. Or Baba Metzia or Baba Batra, which means Baba Metzia often deals with civil tort cases. It means the middle gate. Or Yoma, which deals with Yom Kippur. But it doesn't just deal with one thing, because they're organic discussions and dialogues. So you may start talking about a candle, bless you, and end up in the same dialogue. So we're going to study that actually. We may study that. There's a piece in Shabbat, in Masechta Shabbat. So that's the tractate that's about Sabbath. Can you douse a candle if someone is sick on Shabbat? And they go through this whole Megillah, this whole thing about what is you can or you can't. And they compare this candle because it says in the book of Proverbs that the soul of the human being is the candle flame of God. So now they talk about, what does this have to do with life and death? And it goes all over the map. It is a whole different way of interacting with the world. When you wonder, why did Jews, educated Jews, often go into legal professions or teaching professions? It's because this teaches argumentation techniques. All of modern law comes from this. This is really the source material of all of it in detail. Probate law, inheritance law, it's all in here. Because you've got any issue that you deal with as a probate lawyer, is dealt with 2,000 years ago as well, right? Who gets the inheritance? How should it be split? What are you supposed to do? Should the eldest daughter get any? Should it only go to the oldest son? Right? All these are real questions. How do you do a marriage? How do you do this? How do we deal with death? And it's, again, I come from the place that the stories are more important. The law comes out of the stories. That is a minority opinion. Okay? Everyone with me on what Talmud is. So when someone says the Talmud says, it's anything in these huge volumes, which is why you can always say, really, where? Because here's one of the things that all too often rabbis have a habit of doing. They pull stuff out of their tuchas. And they'll say, the Talmud says, okay, where? If they don't know, their answer should be, I will find out.
This discussion, if I can interject one moment, this discussion is what blows the mind of the fundamentalist Christian.
It's not the fundamentalist Christian. It blows the mind of, more than that, of hardcore Catholicism. It causes a couple of things that are not understood outside, unless you're part of the world where you've really lived in this. It's, number one, it teaches a whole way of thinking, a different way of thinking. Number two, it's about the oral Torah. That this was passed down. Number three, it's about commentary, and it's about dialogue and about arguing. Now, for us, when we argue, I think I've said this before, Rabbi Arthur Rosh Schaefer and I would really get passionately arguing with each other about what was best for the students at LMU, okay, for the kids, the Jewish kids. And our priest friends, and we're very close. It just brought us closer. It was no big deal. I mean, it brought us closer. We're doing something for the sake of heaven. Our priests would look at us, our friends who were priests, and they thought, how could we be friends? We must hate each other because we're arguing with each other. Right? That's what this is about. Because if God is infinite, how can one person have the only understanding of God? So it's the dialogue. Again, one of the things I love about it is, so the Sanhedrin would decide, we side with this rabbi, we side with this rabbi, or Teku, which means we don't know the Messiah, will tell us when he shows up. But if all 71 judges agreed on any judgment, the judgment was thrown out. Because the logic was 71 elders cannot agree on anything. And if they're unanimous about it, something's corrupt. Fabulous, isn't it? So we'll do a little studying from some of the places. So first thing is Pirkei Avot. This, again, is a piece that does not have, it's very short, 6 chapters in it. And it has a little bit of, this does not have a commentary of Gemara, but has lots and lots of books and commentaries. I know we have a lot of Pirkei Avot up here. I know I have a lot at home, too. I'm just trying to see one. I really need to organize this better. I thought I had, but I need to really organize it a lot better. It is, Pirkei Avot has no Gemara attached. So let's do a little reading. And why don't you start reading where it says from Pirkei Avot, in number 1:1, where it says Moses received.
Moses received the Torah at Sinai and transmitted it to Joshua, Joshua to the elders, and the elders to the prophets, and the prophets to the men of the great synagogue.
The Sanhedrin.
The latter used to say 3 things: be patient in (parentheses the administration of) justice, rear many disciples, and make a fence around the Torah.
So what does a fence around the Torah mean? So if you got a pool, you typically have a fence around it to keep children from drowning in it, God forbid, right? The rabbis realized that one of the things that you should do, you should be patient in administering justice. You should get many students. You should raise them up so they really are sages themselves. You should make a fence around the Torah. What is one of the great examples of the fence around the Torah is the idea of chicken being considered meat, right? Meat is meat. You can milk meat. So you can't mix milk and meat. And beef is meat, and goat is meat, and lamb is meat. Then there's milk, like milk and cottage cheese or whatever, and cheese. And then there's parv, neutral, like fish, vegetables. chicken should be neutral. You can't milk a chicken. No matter how hard you try, can't milk chicken. But the rabbis were concerned that a burnt piece of beef and a burnt piece of chicken looked too much alike, and someone would think they are eating chicken when in fact they were eating beef with their milks. And so to build a fence around the Torah, they said if a chicken is considered meat. Okay, that's an example of building a fence around the Torah. Please continue.
Simeon the righteous was one of the last of the men of the great synagogue. He used to say, the world is based upon three things: the Torah, divine service, and the practice of kindliness.
Torah, avodah, v'gemilut chasadim. Torah, the word of God; avodah, righteous labor; and gemilut chasadim, acts of loving kindness. Go on, please.
Antigonus, is that right?
Antigonus.
Antigonus, a man of
So if we ignore that, I copy things, so sometimes it has
he
little numbers.
received the oral tradition from Simeon the righteous. He used to say, be not like unto servants who serve the master in the expectation of receiving a gratuity, but be like unto servants who serve the master without the expectation of receiving a gratuity, and let the awe of heaven be upon you.
Okay, so that's how we should serve God, not to try and get a reward, but out of love. All right, someone else please start on the next page, page 15. Yosef ben Yochanan. Whenever there's an R, it means rabbi. When there's a B, it means ben or son of. Who wants to read? Yosef ben Yochanan.
Joseph B. Yochanan, a man of Jerusalem, used to say, let thy house be wide open, and let the poor be members of thy household. Engage not in too much conversation with women. He said this with regard to one's own wife. How much more does the rule apply with regard to another man's wife? Hence, have the sages said, as long as a man engages in too much conversation with women, he causes evil to himself, for he goes idle from the study of the words of the Torah, so that his end will be that he will inherit
Gehenna, a purgatory. So this sounds pretty misogynistic, doesn't it?
Yeah, a lot of
I love
guys
the
would love
commentary.
this. Don't talk to me.
However, if we're going to be honest, it's true.
Yeah, it is.
It's true.
Yeah.
You danced all over the world.
Yes.
How many men, when you were dancing around the world, decided they just wanted to have conversations with you just because they wanted to be friends?
Yeah. No.
Exactly. Right? Right? This is men get distracted easily. This is being honest, isn't it? This is not misogynistic. It's not don't have conversation with women because they're bad. Don't have conversation with women because you're going to get distracted and not doing what you're supposed to do. Okay? It's totally true, right? Okay, please continue. What do you say? Joshua ben Perai.
Joshua B. Perai used to say, appoint for thyself a teacher, and acquire for thyself a companion, and judge all men in the scale of merit.
Okay, so this again is this this is the idea of appoint for yourself a teacher and acquire for yourself a friend. And our best friends are our best teachers, and our best teachers end up being friends, right? That's right. So it says this. This is also where we get quotes like Hillel used to say, "Imenanili mili." If I'm not for myself, who will be for me? If I'm only for myself, what am I? And if not now, when? Okay, so these things like that. This is Pirkei Avot. Literally, it means ethics of the fathers or teachings of the ancestors. Okay. All right. Now let's look at an actual piece of Talmud. This is from Masechta Shabbat, the tractate on Sabbath. It's from 30b. And if you look on this page, you can see where it's kind of like where I've made a mark. And it starts with the Gemara cites some other examples of ways that Shammai responded to sarcastic or otherwise improper questions. Okay, so it's going to talk about the two different sages who were always in contradiction to each other, Shammai and Hillel. They both were brilliant. Actually, Shammai is right most of the time intellectually, and we side with Hillel most of the time because he's more compassionate and more humble. Okay? So, then I want you to start reading where it says the Gemara cites some other examples. Yep, and the dark print is what is actually in the text, and then the lighter print and not capitalized is the editors, this Schottenstein, to make it into the census.
The Gemara cites some other examples of ways that Shammai responded to sarcastic or otherwise improper questions. The rabbis taught in a baraisa.
A baraisa means an early teaching, an early story.
One should always strive to be humble, gentle in his ways like Hillel, and one should not be stern and unyielding like Shammai.
Okay, it's because Hillel's always very kind and Shammai not so much. Go on, please.
The baraisa illustrates with this a story. It once happened that two people made a bet with one another. They said, whoever goes and provokes Hillel to lose his temper, let him take 400 zuz as his prize. Thereupon one of them said, I will provoke him.
Okay, so this is Agadah. It's a story, right?
Where did this jump to?
Next
Top of
page.
the next page.
Okay, next page. So this is two guys are going to make a bet that we can get Hillel to get angry, right? I say you can, it says you can't. Okay, go on, please.
The baraisa
So this is Agadah, right? This is a story. Go on.
Baraisa recounts the events that followed. That day, it so happened, was Friday, the eve of Sabbath, and Hillel was busy washing his head, i.e. his hair, in preparation for Sabbath.
Okay, so he's in the bath. They didn't have showers at that point, right?
Yeah.
He's in the bath, washing his hair, preparing for the Sabbath, right? We got the scenario. Please continue.
As he was doing so, this person went and passed by the doorway of his house, calling, is there a Hillel here? Is there Hillel here? Hillel put on his cloak and went out to greet the person.
So he gets out of the bathtub, puts on his bathrobe, and goes out to greet him, right? Most people probably would not interrupt their shower bath for that. Go on.
Hillel put on his cloak and went out to greet the person and said to him, my son, what do you seek? The person replied to him, I have a question to ask of you. Hillel said to him, ask, my son, ask. The person then posed his query, why is it that the heads of Babylonians are so round?
Okay, so he's pulled him out of the shower. Hillel's like, what do you need? Like, why do Babylonians have round heads? Okay, go on.
Hillel replied to him, my son, you have asked a truly profound question. The reason is because they do not have skillful midwives.
Okay, so this is what pulled him out of the bath. Okay, on the eve of Shabbat. Already, he's more patient than most people would be. Please continue.
The person then went away and waited a while, and then he returned to the front of Hillel's house and called out, is there a Hillel here? Is there a Hillel?
So he waited a while. So what did Hillel go back and do? Back to the bath, started washing his hair again. Okay, go on.
Hillel again put on his cloak and went out to greet the person and said to him, my son, what do you seek? The person replied to him, I have a question to ask of you. Hillel said to him, ask, my son, ask. The person then asked, why is it that the eyes of the Talmudians are especially round? Hillel replied to him, my son, you have asked a profound question. The reason is because they live in sandy terrain.
Okay, so why are their eyes like that? Most people would say, you pulled me out a second time for this kind of craziness. No, you asked me a truly profound question. Thank you for asking it to me. Okay, the humility, the kindness. Go on.
The person then went away and waited a while.
Oh, what do you wait for? Why is he waiting?
So that he's in the shower.
So Hillel gets back in the bath, exactly.
And then he returned to Hillel's door and called out, is there a Hillel here? Is there a Hillel here? Hillel once again put on his cloak and went out to greet him and said to him, my son, what do you seek? The person replied to him, I have a question to ask of you. Hillel said to him, ask, my son, ask. The person then asked, why is it that the feet of Africans are so wide? Hillel replied to him, my son, you have asked a profound question. The reason is because they live in swamplands. Having failed to exasperate Hillel with his earlier questions, the person made one last attempt to do so. He said to him, I have a great many questions to ask, and I am fearful that you may become angry with me. Hillel wrapped himself in his cloak, sat down in front of him, and said to him, Every question you have to ask, feel free to ask. The person then said to him, Are you the great Hillel, whom they call the Nasi of the Jewish people?
Nasi meaning prince.
Hillel replied, Yes. The person then said to him, If it is indeed you, let there not be many like you among the Jewish people. Hillel replied, My son, why do you say such a thing? The person responded, Because on your account I have lost 400 zuz. And he revealed to Hillel the wager he had made. Hillel responded to him, One should always vigilantly guard his disposition so that he maintains equanimity in all situations. Hillel is worth your losing on his account 400 zuz, and yet another 400 zuz. But Hillel will not take offense.
Okay, so this is a story. From it, we get the legal practice of how we are to treat people. Make sense? But it's a story. It's Agadah. All right. I want you to continue as we go on with another Hillel Shammai story. Go on. No. Okay, I'm sorry, Kirsty, you didn't do it. Kirsty, you came in late. Your turn. Go. Where it says a baraisa about Hillel's exceptional humility.
A Baraisa shows how Hillel's exceptional humility has succeeded bringing others closer to God. The rabbis taught in a Baraisa, it once happened that a Gentile came before Shammai and said to him, How many Torahs do you Jews have? Shammai replied to him, We have two, the written Torah and the oral Torah. The Gentile then said to him, As for the Torah that is written, I believe you that it was given by God. But concerning the Torah that was oral, I do not believe you. Convert me to Judaism on the condition that you will teach me only the written Torah, that I shall be bound only by its tenets. Upon hearing this, Shammai berated him for his insolence and sent him away disapprovingly. Afterwards, however, the Gentile came before Hillel with the same request, and Hillel converted him.
So he goes to Shammai, and Shammai says, Look, there's written Torah, and there's Torah Shabbal Peh, oral Torah. And the guy says, I'm not going to accept the oral Torah. And Shammai says, Get out of here. You're horrible. You don't know what you're talking about. Go, goodbye. Comes to Hillel and says, Yeah, I'll convert you. You're going to have to learn. Please continue.
The Baraisa relates the end of the story. One day, Hillel taught the alphabet to the new convert, saying to him, alphabet,
Aleph, Beis, Gimel, Dalet,
and so on.
A, B, C, D. Okay.
But the following day, when the convert came for the next lesson, Hillel reversed the names of the letters for him, teaching him that the letter he had called an Allah the day before was in reality a Tav. And
So do you understand what he did? Do you guys get what so he said to the prospective convert, this is A, B, C, D, E. Got it? And the next day he said, this is Z, Y, X, W, V. This is rather confusing. Okay, so what happens?
And so on. Taken aback by the change, the convert said to Hillel, But yesterday you did not recite it to me this way. Hillel replied to him, So you see then, are you not relying upon me to recognize the letters of the alphabet? Rely on me also then about the veracity of the oral law.
Isn't that beautiful?
Mm.
Come on, read the next one too.
A second
keep
narrative
going.
again depicts Hillel's interaction with the prospective convert. There was another incident involving a certain Gentile who came before Shammai and said to him, Convert me to Judaism on the condition that you will teach me the entire Torah. Will I stand on one
Very,
foot?
very famous story. Very, very famous story.
Upon hearing these words, Shammai pushed the person away with the ruler he was holding in his hand. Unfettered, the Gentile came before Hillel and presented him with the same request, and Hillel converted him. Before the conversion, Hillel said to him, That which is hateful to you, do not do to your fellow. This, in a few words, is the entire Torah. All the rest is but an elaboration of this one central point. Now go and learn it.
It's a version of the golden rule, isn't it?
Yeah.
But it's different. Here's how it's different. What's the golden rule?
Do unto others as you shall.
Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. This is do not do unto others as you do not want them doing to you. Why is it different? Let us suppose that you have Mr. Poloni here, and Mr. Poloni is a masochist. That gives him the right to hurt other people, doesn't it? According to the golden rule, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. If he wants people to hurt him, that gives him the right to hurt other people. Make sense? Do not do to others what you do not want them doing to you. Eliminates that possibility.
Don't you assume that people are not crazy?
That doesn't make any assumptions. Makes no assumptions. You like that? Or you?
Can you flip it again? Can you explain it again?
Okay. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you.
Uh-huh.
The guy's a masochist. He likes pain. He likes being hurt for whatever reason. He likes suffering. Grew up in whatever, abuse, whatever. That gives him the right, do unto others as you would have them do unto you, to hurt everybody else. Because he likes the suffering. Do not do unto others means he does not have the right to give them pain. Make sense? It's a double negative instead of the positive. But in phrasing it as a double negative, it actually prohibits, it actually eliminates the option of danger happening as a result of it. Okay? So you don't want anyone, you don't like people giving you joy? Okay, don't give them joy. But you don't get to give them pain. Make sense, the difference? Someone is very greedy. Okay, they want to, they're very greedy. Well, this prohibits them from taking advantage of others. Okay, it's much more powerful. Okay, so you get the idea of Hillel and Shmuel. It's a very, very famous story that I'm not for myself. Who will be for me? These are free to take off. All right, we're going to move on to the next page where it says Yochanan and Reish Lakish. These beat up these copy.
Where is it?
It looks like this. It says Yochanan and Reish Lakish. Okay,
84.
it's chapter 7, Baba Metzia. It's page 84. Got it? Now, Yochanan is a great scholar. Reish Lakish is a great scholar. Yochanan, they are actually brother-in-laws. They are best friends. Some say they were more than that. A little Brokeback Talmud. We don't know about that. And Yochanan was gorgeous. He was gorgeous. Apparently, he had a long, beautiful hair down to his tochas. Stunningly good looking, and he glowed because of the Spirit of God on him. Okay? So this is, it's actually, my son is named, is Yochanan. We thought it was going to be Jonathan and Yonatan, but he wanted Yochanan. Okay, I told you that. He kept saying Yonatan. He kept grimacing. Said Yochanan on a lark and started laughing. It's like, okay, it's Yochanan. So let's read about Yochanan and Reish Lakish when they meet. And this is, throughout the Talmud, they're sparring partners, okay, to get to deeper understandings. But this little passage is going to talk about the beginning and ending of their relationship. So, who's next?
The Gemara records the story of the relationship between Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish. The narrative begins before Reish Lakish rise to eminence. One day, Rabbi Yochanan was swimming in the Jordan River. Reish Lakish, who was then a highwayman, saw him.
So he's a thief. He's a scoundrel. He's a whatever, right? He's a highwayman.
Saw him and jumped into the Jordan after him.
Why do you think he was jumping into the Jordan? Come on. He sees this gorgeous long-haired beauty in the Jordan bathing naked.
And thinks it's a girl?
Thinks it's a woman.
Maybe.
From the back, thinks it's a woman.
Yeah.
So he comes swimming out as hard as he can, as hard and fast as he can. And it's like, hello, humana, humana, humana. Wait a minute. Okay, please continue.
It says beheld this display of
Rabbi Yochanan.
Yochanan beheld this display of vitality and said to him, "Your strength belongs to the Torah." Reish Lakish said to him, "Your beauty belongs to women."
Because a man shouldn't be this good looking.
Yeah, right. Yochanan said to him, "If you will repent your ways, I will give you my sister in marriage." That's bold of him. Who is more beautiful than I. And Reish Lakish accepted this upon himself. Lakish then wanted to return to retrieve his clothes, but was unable to muster the strength to do so. Rabbi Yochanan afterwards taught him scripture and Mishnah and made him into a great man.
Okay, so he so fully gives his passion to God that he doesn't even have the strength to swim back now. Okay? And he becomes this great, great scholar and leader and teacher. Continue, please.
The narrative continues.
This is Agadah, right? This is not halacha. This is Agadah. This is a story.
The narrative continues. One day, many years later, they were disputing the following point in the study halls. The Mishnah states, the sword and the knife and the hunting spear and the military spear and the hand sickle and the harvesting sickle. From what point are they capable of becoming tamai?
Tameh, impure. Okay.
Impure. Okay. It is from
So
the time of the completion of their production. And when is the completion of their production?
okay, so the question is, you're making a knife. At what point is it now a weapon as opposed to a tool? Okay?
Right.
Everyone agrees it's at the moment of completion. But now the question is, when is the moment of completion? So I have a letter opener that at some point could have been used as a dagger, right? But at some point it was clear it was for a letter opener, not for a dagger. And so the question is, what is that point? Okay? That's the question before the court. Okay, not a complex question. I mean, it's hard to understand, but that's what it is, right? Okay, please continue. What happens now?
And when is the completion of production? And Rabbi Yochanan says, from when are tempered in a furnace.
When the metal, you guys see in the paragraph.
When the metal utensils are tempered in the furnace. Reish Lakish says, from when they are polished with water.
So they're arguing about when is the time of completion. Yochanan says when it's through the fire, and he says no, it's afterwards when it's polished with water after it's been in the fire. Okay?
I think they're both wrong, but let's go on.
Go on.
Rabbi Yochanan said to Reish Lakish, a thief knows the tools of his thievery.
Uh-oh. What did he just do?
Admitted to having been a thief.
Called him out, and he brought up his past.
Yeah.
How many of you have been in a long-term relationship?
Yes.
Is that ever a good idea?
No.
Is that ever going to lead to anything good? No.
No.
Right? Yeah, it's just. Allison was the first woman that I ever kissed, and that is my story, and I'm sticking to it. Okay, right? You don't bring up the past in a relationship. You don't bring up past mistakes. This is a bad idea. To say, you 33 years ago. It's a bad idea, right? So what has Yochanan done? He said, Yochanan said, "Well, you were a thief. Now, is this okay?
Yeah.
Is this okay for him to do?
Yeah,
No.
but
Okay.
it's turning to what I was thinking. It's finished when it's used the first time for whatever it is.
They're saying the intention makes the difference.
Yes.
Mhm.
Okay, so go on, keep going.
Yeah. Okay. Reish Lakish replied to him, and how have you benefited from me?
No, how have you benefited me? How have you?
Oh, how
what
have
was
you
that comment?
benefited?
What good did that comment do for me?
Yeah, nothing. Okay. There among the thieves, they called me rabbi. I was their leader.
I was their
And
leader.
Here they call me rabbi. And Rabbi Yochanan said to him, I benefited you in that I brought you under the wings of the divine presence.
So he's now said to him, I brought up your past, and I got a right to do that because I'm the one who helped you change your past. Is that okay? But
Imperious.
But the other guy said, listen, I was the head thief. So
I was-
I was pretty good.
and here you're insulting. Okay, continue. Your turn. Let's go on.
Rabbi Yohan became disheartened because of Resh Lakish's response.
Because here's the other question, the other issue. Yes, Yochanan called him out in a way that was inappropriate, but Reish Lakish called his teacher out in public too. Is that okay?
No.
Right? All right. So
Resh Lakish became seriously ill. Rabbi Yohan's sister, who was Resh Lakish's wife, came before Rabbi Yohan. She cried and pleaded with him to pray for Resh Lakish's recovery. She said to him, "Act for the sake of my children, prevent their father from dying." Rabbi Yohan replied to her with this verse, "Leave your orphans, I will sustain
this is
them."
from the book of Jeremiah. So she says, brother, stop. Pray for my husband to be well. It's because this problem, he's dying. He says, I'll take care of it. God will take care of your children. Don't worry about it. Go on.
She said, "Act for the sake of my impending widowhood." He said to her, "And let your widows trust in me."
Again from Jeremiah.
Shimon ben Lakish passed away.
So that's Bar Lakish, or Bar Lakish, that was his actual name. So Simon, the son of Lakish, okay? And he passed away and he died. It's a pretty horrible story, isn't it?
Yeah.
Oh, it gets worse. Go on.
But Rabbi Yohan grieved after him considerably. The rabbis said, "Who shall go bring comfort to his mind?" Rabbi Elazar ben Pedash should go, for his scholarship is brilliant. So he went and sat before him. To everything Rabbi Yohan would say, Rabbi Elazar ben Pedas told him, "We learned a brisa that supports you."
Okay, so what happens? Yochanan is bereft. He's miserable. And so they say, "Oh, we're going to send Rabbi Eliezer over there, Ben Pedas. He's a scholar." And they show up, and Yochanan says something, and Eliezer says, "You're right." He says something else. He says, "You're right." Trying to comfort him. Go on, please.
Rabbi Yohan eventually said to him, "You're supposed to be like a bar Laishka, i.e. Resh Lakish. With Bar Lakisha, whatever I would say something, he would pose 24 difficulties to me, and I would give him 24 solutions. And as a result of the give and take, subject matter became clear. However, you constantly say, 'We learned a brisa that supports you.' Of what use is this? Do I already know that I have said well?"
So what happens? He says, What do you agree with me? I know I'm right. I don't need you to agree with me. God is infinite. Every time I would say it was something with Reish Lakish, he'd argue with me. Pose 24 other questions. We'd get deeper and deeper and deeper in the discussion. God is infinite. So I can't just have the answer. I don't need someone to tell me I'm right. I need someone else to interact with, to dance with.
But you had that.
But he doesn't. And so he says, what do I need this for? God is, and this tells us also, well, do we believe that our path is the only path? The way we view God, our tradition is the only way? No. It's the best way for us. I'll say all the time, Judaism is the best religion for it. Doesn't mean it's the best religion in the world. Right? Who am I to say that when I was at this church meeting and these people were speaking with tongues, and they were clearly passionate and being possessed by spirit, and it was beautiful. Who am I to say that's not God speaking? It's just not the way that I pray. It's not my experience. But when I'm praying deeply in Hebrew, that's not their experience. God is infinite, and it teaches us here. Reish Lakish, Yochanan is saying, look, I don't need someone to say I'm right. I know I'm right. I need someone to help us dive deeper so we can understand the infinite. This becomes an understanding, a basic understanding of how Judaism thinks theologically, isn't it? Because it's about not the answer, but about the journey. And it's right here from Talmud. This is the Agadah, the story that teaches with two of the greatest sages that ever lived, ever. And they're saying we need to treat each other with respect. We need to be fully passionate, fully committed. We need not to bring up the past, and we need to, for the sake of heaven, not arguments not for the sake of heaven, but for the sake of heaven, those kind of arguments we need to really explore deeply to understand God at a more deep level. Because otherwise God is finite, and that's not what God is. Please continue.
Excuse me.
Rabbi Yohan would go about and tear his clothes and would cry and say, "Where are you, Bar Lakish? Where are you?" Until his sanity wore away from him. The rabbis prayed for mercy on him, and Rabbi Yohan passed away.
Horrible, terrible tragedy. And yet we learn law from this, don't we? We learn about how we need to treat each other, especially publicly. How we're supposed to treat our teachers, especially publicly. We learn how we're not supposed to bring up the past in dialogues of things. We learn how if you give yourself fully, it doesn't matter, you can be forgiven, like what Rachel Lakish was, right? He gave it all to God. We learn that it's not a single answer. Judaism is not monolithic. When someone says, this is the Jewish way, this is what Judaism says, you can almost be guaranteed they're wrong. Because one of the practices that we have, and it comes from Talmud, and it's an extremely, extremely important statement. Okay? Elu ve'elu. It literally means these and these. And the phrase is, these words and these words are both words of the living God. It's not just this. I don't have the monopoly on interpreting Torah. Your interpretation, your interpretation, your interpretation, your interpretation, your interpretation, they all have validity. The whole point of a bar mitzvah or a bat mitzvah is that they're giving their interpretation of Torah, right? And they're adding to it. They all this behind me, all these commentaries and everything else. It's the idea that it's always growing, and God doesn't, there's not the way. There are ways. And this is the typical way, but there's also atypical ways. This is how we do it, but it doesn't mean it's exclusive. And again, go back to that Parsha and Parsha Shoftim, that verse that said you should go to the judges, the rabbis of your time, and do what they say left or right. It's about relationship.
Why is the Talmud closed? Is the Talmud closed now? Don't we have still great people?
So yes, it's closed by the 4th century, but as a text. And then you have these other commentaries like the Tosafot and Rambam and Rashi that are around, who are so great that they're actually typically in this. But you have, sages do commentaries. Rabbis do. A rabbi should do Torah commentary. We have, 2 years of me doing a 3-minute video, Orlando, on every Torah portion? Okay. I did it a couple of cycles just written, and then a couple of cycles just video. You want to know what a rabbi, what a rabbi is? Look at it. If he's been writing commentary on Torah, what's it? How does he interact with Torah? I interact with Torah more from a place of spirituality than from a place of legalism, because that's how I interact with the world. Does that mean I'm right?
It appears that almost, well, yes and no. Okay.
No, I am right.
No,
I am right. I'm not exclusively right.
that's what
Because elu ve'elu.
Yes.
So when a rabbi says, is it this or that? Typically the answer should be yes.
Yes. That's
Okay.
what I meant.
Okay.
That's what
So
I
am
meant.
I right? Yes. And is this rabbi over here who looks at it without any spirituality and totally from a legalistic do this, don't do this point, is he right? Yes. Just not for me.
But
Am
you-
I right for him? No.
But you don't make up your interpretation of the Torah. It's based on your experiences, and it's based on discussions, and it's based on stories.
And on other texts.
Yes.
And on text, we build upon the rabbis before us, on the sages before us. We build upon what is there. That is what one of the differences. There's not a lot of Christian commentary, right? There's not a lot of Christian commentary.
No, that's correct.
Okay. Ours is we build and build and build. So we have more and more commentaries that we can look back at. Rabbeinu Bachya, or we'll get to these guys, or Rambam, or Rashi, these different sages throughout the centuries. And so, but I'll tell you something this is how many think you're going to make it to Israel with us? You're going to make it to Israel with us. You may make it to, you're not sure if you're going to come to Israel with us. It hasn't come, we haven't sent it out the email yet because they're still finishing the landing page of the travel agency. But we're going to, God willing, we're doing a trip to Israel this summer. 2 weeks. I will tell you a journey that I had. Okay. So there's this place in Svat. Svat is this mystical city up in Tiberias. Beautiful, beautiful place. And up in Tiberias is where all these, it's right around the Galilee. And that's where all these mystics are buried. Okay. I mean, literally, I was in Rabbi Akiva's tomb. You know, I had a picture. I mean, the boys, they were very, very unhappy. I said, get down and kneel. I want to see, take a picture of you with Rabbi Akiva's tomb. Okay. Just get down. Okay. Rabbi Meir Baal from the Talmud. Maimonides, all these different sages. What? They're in Tiberias and Sfat. In Sfat, there's this amazing cemetery. It's huge. And it's dirt. And it's hills. And it's rickety metal steps that have been placed there to make it a little safer for people. And, you know, it's probably a good 45-minute walk if you just walk straight to the top. And at the top is where Rabbi Isaac Luria, of blessed memory, is one of the great mystics. Rabbi Moshe Cordovero, one of the great mystics. And throughout, there are all these different great sages that are buried there. That their tombs are there, their gravestones. And including my teacher and friend Schwartzy of blessed memory, who's buried there. And it's 100+ degrees. And it's dirt and it's hot. Allison hates all of the above. She loved it. She would tell you it was one of her, if not her favorite place in Israel. And one of the most favorite places she's ever had in the world because it was so alive. We happened to be there on the yard site of Rabbi Moshe Cordovero the Rama, this great mystic. He had Corbin and Luria at the very top. Well, I'm stopping at different graves on the way up there. And there's a man named Rabbi Joseph Caro. We'll learn and study about him. Rabbi Caro was part of that same group of mystics, but he really isn't known for that. He is the composer, the author of the Shulchan Aruch. It's a book of Jewish law. Do this, don't do this, don't do this, do this. It's very... I have never in my life related to the Shulchan Aruch or to Joseph Caro. I'm more interested in the feely-good, touchy-feely, you know, be touched by God, that kind of stuff is always sung more to me. That's all. It's not good or bad. It's just, it's not that I've always respected Caro. And I get to Caro's tomb, and there's a blue awning over it. It's shade. I mean, it's so hot. And I get to, and I'm stopping at all these different people's tombs, these sages, to say Kaddish. And I stop at Rabbi Caro's tomb. Kids are with me. Boys are with me. Alice is wandering somewhere over. I'm not sure where she was. She was having a ball. She just loved it. And she hates dirt and heat. I'm with the boys. I stopped at Caro's to say Kaddish. So it's Rabbi Yosef Caro, some of the sons. And before I can start saying Kaddish, I'm about to say the prayer. I start uncontrollably shaking and crying, sobbing. Uncontrollably, my body is shaking. It could have been a revival meeting. My body was shaking, and I am sobbing. If you had told, so obviously something was affecting my soul at the deepest of levels. If you had told me that would happen at the grave of a mystic like Luria, I wouldn't have been surprised. So, oh, okay, that makes sense. But at the legalists, the great legalists, too, this is where Mr. Feelygood with the ponytail lost it. Elu ve'elu. These words and these words are both words of the living God. And it comes out of this piece with Talmud as well, right? And the understanding that we need to have that dialogue, that debate, that machlochet. We have to have it so that we can go to a deeper, deeper place. Because God is infinite. And if you say this is the way, that's not how we are as Jews. And yet, how often do we hear from orthodoxy?
That's right.
But how much of that orthodoxy is really based upon how they've been influenced by Catholicism in Eastern Europe? Okay. Because the law, as we said, doesn't mean law the same way. It means a way of going, which is why there are exceptions to everything. It's why a great rabbi, famous to go to Vilna, but during a plague on Yom Kippur, got up with a chicken leg and started eating at services. He said, we all need to eat. There's a plague going around. You cannot let your bodies be weak. It's everything is moving. It's in a relationship. And this goes back to what we learned in Torah and Tanakh, doesn't it? And Talmud is so rich and beautiful. We're going to study more Talmud next week, so you can take these with you and bring them, or you can leave them here. And we're going to study one of my very favorite pieces, which was one of the most fun things to teach to Catholic students which is where the rabbis tell God to stick his nose out of it. And they all thought that the next scene.
That went over well.
Okay. So everyone, the Catholics all thought, well, what's the next scene? God's going to strike them down with lightning.
Yeah.
That's not what happens. God actually laughs.
I'm getting something out of this, and that the written Talmud was finished, but it really, the concept of Talmud has not died.
Never.
It keeps going.
Always.
Yeah.
It should, because there's more information. There's more things that happen. We have to deal with more issues.
Especially in the modern world.
But it's always true, because it's always the modern world.
That's right.
In 1500, that was the modern world in 1500 compared to that.
I understand. Okay.
You said a mystic. What is that? What's the difference?
Between.
You said the mystic versus the legalistic one?
So the legal, so the idea of do this, don't do this, do this, don't do this. Okay. As opposed to really it's all about through meditation, prayer, experience, having Yehud. We'll get to mysticism as well, but unification with God, to experience the unity with God. And that those two paths seem to be very divergent. They're not. They are interwoven deeply. And we'll get to that too. But that's, and hopefully we'll have the Israel trip. They will have this finally right this week. I have told them, because I want everything so specific, because this isn't going through the temple. And I'm just helping with the programming of it. And I want to make sure everything is, and they're not happy with me, but everything is exactly specific. So that if you think you're getting this room, this kind of room, this is the kind of room you get. If you think you're getting a bathtub, there better darn well be a bathtub. If you think you're getting a shower, there better darn well be a shower. If you think the room is this size or that size, if you think, the line of, if the Maccabi games are canceled, you will get a credit for a future trip is too vague, because they've already told me that all of it will be credited for a future trip if Maccabi cancels the games. And we'll go to Israel another time. But saying if you get a future credit is not being up. I want us to say 100% you'll get a future credit for the exact same trip in the future. So their marketing people did stuff that I kept saying, look, no, you got to be more specific. You can't just say a room with 2 twin beds that convert to a king, because that might be a closet, right? Or it might be, 1,000 square foot suite, and we don't want someone expecting the 1,000 square foot suite and getting a closet. So whatever we say it is, and you can always say the upgrades are available if you want to pay more, but you got to have very clear. So hopefully that will be done this week, and we'll send it out to everyone on the email list, because you got our emails, and we'll see how many people want to go. It's going to be an amazing trip. We will be going to opening ceremonies of the Maccabi game. We'll be going to a private gala hosted by President Herzog. We will be going to Jewish sites, Christian sites. We'll be going to river rafting down the Jordan River. We will be going on the Galilee. We will be going to Church of the Holy Sepulchre. We'll be going underneath the ruins of Jerusalem to the tunnel that Hezekiah built. We will be going to the Nova Film Festival site, and then we will be going to have a barbecue with IDF soldiers on their base. So it's going to be it's going to be very intense and very wonderful. And there will be time for shopping.
Friday, we have services.
Friday, we have services in costume.
It's a costume. Party
Purim,
celebration.
costume. Awards for best costume.
I hate
My
shopping.
tickets for the locker lounge.
My owner costume.
It can be anything. You can look, you can